I'm not in it just for that reason primarily. We keep what I do pretty private. My friends know what I do, but people I meet don't. If they recognize me, then we talk about it a little bit, but then they understand that I'm just a regular person like them, going to the gym or going to the grocery store. I don't get approached, often at all, which is pretty nice. So I'm in my own obscure world too. I'm not retired yet, but I enjoy that piece. And, if I had my way, I would live up in the mountains of Georgia and I would be at peace. That's where I found my most, solace environment, was just being in the mountains in Georgia or being in the mountains. I have some property in Northern California I inherited from my grandfather, that he purchased back in the 1950s.
Wow.
So my brother and I have 44 acres up there, and I like to just sit in quiet and look at the stars, listen to the birds, watch the deer run, and whatever else other wildlife is running around out there. That to me is living and breathing, but I also know that God has a purpose for my life, and that's to be a light and to share a message of hope, so anytime I get an opportunity to minister to somebody, I like it. And I like to be ministered to, because like a lot of people think, well, you're a Christian, you're goody, and there's times that I've failed and I needed to be corrected, and I appreciate that when someone can just come at me with an honest truth and slow me down a little bit, because the world does want to consume you and help you to step the wrong way, and being not involved in a social environment online keeps me at least somewhat accountable, because what's done in the dark does come to light. And I like to make sure what I'm doing stays in the light, and who I am on the phone or who I am in public or who you think I am inside of an octagon or a ring is the same person you're going to encounter, in any situation. So that's my life goal, my intentions.
I love that you said that too, because you are putting out who you are as just authentic all the time. And I do love that you also say that you enjoy being checked, because I think a lot more people need to have that checked, whether it be somebody else or themselves. Look in the mirror and say, hey, have a real talk with yourself. It's like, is this where you want to be? Is this what you want to be doing? Where do you actually see yourself going? Or is what you're doing now going to help you get to where you really want to go? Or, even if it comes down to physical appearance, like, is this really what you want to do right now? Is the clothes, are they fitting properly? Like, is this really where you want to be and who you want to be? And sometimes we do need those outside sources of reality checks of, that maybe this isn't where I want to be. Or I'm glad this person actually came and said this thing, where some people could, you can get offended, but you can't live in that offensiveness. You have to then be like, okay, well, why am I offended by this? And then learn from that and then grow from that.
Right. No, it's funny you say that too, because my wife and my kids and I got into that show, This Is Us. And it was over.
Okay. So I love Parenthood a lot. And people have told me, if you like Parenthood, you should watch This Is Us. And this is the second time today This Is Us came up in my universe. So tell me more about This Is Us, because I feel like I need to get into it, but I just haven't.
Well, there's a character on the show, and his name's Toby, and he does some quirky stuff. And I look at it, and I'm like, what a dummy. Some of the things he would do and say, I'm like, this guy is such a knucklehead. And my kids would always cringe, and my wife would look at me when I would comment on him. And then finally they go, Dad, that's you. And I'm like, and then I had to reassess the whole thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, that is me. I do some of that stuff, and I do read people's mail sometimes when I should just be quiet and check my own self, and I was like, gosh darn it, you got me, because sure enough, I find myself often shaking my head at something somebody does, but then reflecting on it and thinking, gosh, I do the same thing. What would people think if they saw me doing that? So it's funny. Sometimes TV, the fiction becomes a little bit of your own reality, and it opens up your eyes a tad.
I do love that they I mean, so my girlfriend and I are watching Sopranos right now because I've never seen it. And so we're going through it, and it's great so far. But there's a lot of times I'm looking, I'm like, oh man, that even still holds up to now. And you could see, like you said, you see yourself in little bits of this character, and this character, depending on what the situation is. And you're just like, man, I'm the exact same way. I need to not do that.
Yeah. Yep. No, there's a lot of that.
Now, you said you got on with Golden Boy. How did you go from being a sports writer to, who gave you the first chance of being an announcer? Did you kind of just do some local things first and then you got the chance to do that? Or was it just one of those, you need somebody and you just happen to be there?
No, it was quite a process, a bit of a learning curve. You know, I didn't just hop into the fight game and everything happened. I was, in high school, I broke my wrist my senior year. So I didn't get to play baseball, and the announcer didn't show up one game, and I said, Coach, let me get up there and, do it. So he goes, yeah, go ahead. So I get up and I do it, and I had a great time, and people commented on it, and, it was like, okay, I kind of had an affinity for it. Didn't think that was the capacity I'd want to work in, sitting in a box and saying names. But it was a path that was already being carved out. And, when I got to Cal State Fullerton for my final 2 years of college, I was announcing all the sports at the school. I actually walked into the sports information office and I said, hi, I'm Joe Martinez and I announce sports. So if you ever need anybody, please let me know. And they said, well, what are you doing this weekend? And then that's where it started at Fullerton. And I became the softball announcer, and I did that for 19 years and did the College World Series and toured with the Olympic team. Just doors started to open up that way for me. But while I was doing college basketball, the scorekeeper was one of the inspectors for the California State Athletic Commission, and he really encouraged me and says, Joe, you should get into boxing. You do well there. And I said, Dean, I don't know anybody. His name's Dean Loheis. And next thing I know, I got a call from a promoter in Maywood, East LA, and named Ray Alcorta, and he says, hey, your uncle says you announce fights, and I need a ring announcer. And I said, yeah, I announce fights. I knew nothing about what I was going to do. And I said, well, who's my uncle? And he says, Dean. He goes, oh yeah, my Uncle Dean. Thank you. I appreciate that. So he vouched for me, and, and that's where it began. And I fell in love with just getting to do that. I thought it was super, cool. I didn't, again, think it was going to be a career for me. Didn't plan it that way, but lo and behold, it was part of the process that here we are today.
Now, were there some announcers that you kind of were inspired by and kind of also maybe imitated until you really truly found your groove and how you would kind of say and announce things?
I really enjoyed, watching Jimmy Lennon Jr. Him and Michael Buffer were the two that were only the main two in my time. It was Showtime and HBO and everywhere in between, it was them. So I love Jimmy's presentation, his enunciation and his clarity, and that matters to me. And I liked Michael's energy, and I felt like I had the same type of energy. I'm never going to be over the top. I'm not your in-your-face kind of announcer. I'm just a matter of fact, and here he is, and here's the result, and that's it. Because in my mind, people aren't paying to see Joe Martinez up there announcing. They're there to see a fight. I'm not part of a show. I'm very private, but I'm approachable, and I think that's just the way I carry myself and always have. I've been humble. I grew up humble. I didn't have much growing up. And I saw a lot of hard work happen before my eyes with my grandparents and my own parents and the struggles that came with it. So I never was able to have more than enough, but I had exactly what I needed. I had a loving family that supported me in my endeavors, and that support meant everything. Nothing was ever handed to any of the Martinezes or the Greens. My grandparents were Greens, and it was just a lot of work, a lot of hard work, and a lot of know-how. And I don't like to hire people to do things. Like, I had two houses in Georgia that had unfinished basements, and I got quotes on them, and it was, in my mind, too much money to do, so I learned how to do it watching YouTube for hours and hours and hours. Yeah, and I finished a couple basements on my own, and proud to say they didn't fall down. The house is still standing, and so I must have done something right.
It's funny you say that. My brother, actually, we both bought homes roughly around the same time. He's up in Canada. I'm down here in Texas. And so we've kind of been sharing, being a homeowner and all the other stuff. And I'm lucky enough that my dad is close by, and he's very handy with fixing things and how to do things. Unfortunately for my brother, my dad is not very close to him. So he has been definitely delving down the rabbit hole of YouTube on how to fix things and what to do and what not to do. So isn't
it one of the greatest things? I mean, YouTube is like one of the greatest things ever. Man, I remember when I first heard of it, I was like, YouTube, U-T-U-B-E? Like, no, like YouTube. And I said, what? And that just changed my life. I'm like, oh my gosh. That's when everybody became superstars.
Oh, of course. I mean, you've got a kid unwrapping presents and he's making millions of dollars. Like, that's absolutely insane.
It's a strange world.
Yeah. And on the other end, you have like hot ones where people eat 10 hot wings and, just sweat through the whole thing. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I did a boxing match in, I want to say, July or August in Nashville, and it was a bunch of YouTubers fighting on DAZN. And it was, I brought my son with me. He's 13, and he goes, Dad, this is this guy, and this is this guy. And I'm like, I don't know who you're talking about. I have no idea. But it was neat though, because there was one YouTuber guy that was sitting out there as a fan. His son recognized him, and he called my daughter, and he says, Danny, this guy's here. And she goes, oh my gosh. So I got on FaceTime with my daughter, and I went over to the fella, and I said, hey, would you mind saying hello to my daughter? And he says, oh, absolutely. So she gets on, and I have no idea. And she's like, you helped me through so much just with your words of encouragement on your channel. And, and it made his day, which, makes my day because it made my daughter's day. And, it was super cool, and like it or love it or hate it or don't. But I mean, there's some really good, genuine people out there on YouTube that are bringing good messages. Of course, with everything comes toxicity, but for that fellow, I mean, he earned my respect that night, and I appreciate that. When you're doing good for kids, that's huge. You're building people up instead of breaking them down, and it matters.
I think that needs to be brought more to light for people than obviously the toxicity, because it's easy to talk about the negative and the toxicity things that are happening in the world, but I don't think enough people spend enough time on the good things that are happening in the world, because at the end of the day, those are going to, help you through far more than the negative stuff is. The negative stuff is going to pull you down. All that positive and good stuff is going to bring you up and motivate you to be even better and be, hopefully spread that good news and positivity to other people.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that you really enjoyed the making sure you articulate the names and everything, and you have the unenviable task of announcing some of rather complicated names. Now, just even looking at some of them, will make your head explode. Do you have a certain method for getting the pronunciation correct and to not mess it up?
Phonics, bro. Yeah, I write phonetically. Audio files help. With UFC, we're quite blessed with that, because Heidi Dean, who is one of our producers, she actually sits with fighters and she'll have them record their names, or John Gooden will do it in pre-interview stuff, and we have files of every single fighter that ever comes on a card. So doesn't matter what the name is, when they say it, you get it. But we can't always agree on what it sounds like. It might sound different to Anik and Fitzgerald than it sounds to me, and vice versa. But that's pretty much how I do it. I get that pronunciation from them, and then we hopefully do it right. Those are the two things that matter to me most, though. It's how I say their name and how I say the town that they're from, because I know